Hi guys, welcome back to Planet Moonshine, the channel where we use home distilling techniques in a professional microbrewery. I know I've been off the air for a little while, but hopefully we're coming back strong in Feb. What are we doing today? Today we're going to be looking at a keg conversion video, converting a beer keg into a boiler for a still. But wait, I hear you cry, you've already done that. And those of you who've been following the channel from the beginning will know that my very first video was in fact a 50-litre keg conversion video. And it's been great, my most popular video on the channel and the most commented on and the most loved. So why am I doing it again? Well, it turns out that sometimes a 50-litre boiler is just too big and I want something a bit smaller. So I'm going to do a 30-litre conversion. If you want to know more about why sometimes a 50 litre is too big and a 30 would be better, keep watching. If you want to see how I approach the conversion in detail, keep watching. Also, there's some lessons learned from the last time I did this, and some questions people have been asking are being answered. So if that's what you're interested in, stick around and we'll pick it up in just a sec. Okay, so why is a 50-litre pot sometimes too big? Don't get me wrong, it's a great size. If you've got a lot of stripping runs to do, you want to strip down a lot of washes into low wines, that's an absolutely great size to do because you can usually get between 35 and 40 litres in there. And if I'm putting in say a 6% wash, then I know I'm going to get 4 litres out of 4 litres of low wines minimum out of a stripping run of 35 to 40 litres. That's great, but the trouble is, if I want to do a smaller run, the minimum that I can safely put in the still is around 24-25 litres, because I have to have enough to cover the elements and enough that when that boils down and all that vapour comes out, the element still remains covered at the end of the run. So that means if I want to get enough low wines to do a spirit run, then I have to do something like 6 or 7 stripping runs to get enough low wines, to get enough volume to be able to do a good spirit run. And yes, I could add water to bulk out the amount of low wines in the pot to do the spirit run, but the lower your starting ABV, the lower your finishing ABV. And yeah, you can run the still a little bit differently to try to bump that up, but it's a general rule of thumb that the lower you start, the lower you finish. So sometimes I just want to do a smaller run. Also, if I put in 25 litres of low wines, then I'm going to get about 8 litres of high ABV spirits out. And again, that's great if I want 8 litres of high ABV spirits. But sometimes I just don't have the desire to make that much of the same product. So a 30-litre keg should fix that. With a 30-litre keg, because they're narrower and taller, I should be able to quite easily get away with a 6 or 8 litre fill without worrying about the element. So that's why we are going down that route, to give me something that will let me do smaller runs. So for example, if I'm making a gin and I don't want to make a huge amount of gin, or I'm doing a flavoured gin and I don't want to do a huge amount of the same style, this is what's going to help me. Now, those of you who will remember from my first video, we built everything modular. We built around a tri-clamp system. This is a tri-clamp ferrule. Now, everything that's fitted to my 50 litre still is tri-clamped on. That includes the heating element, the drain port, the filling and cleaning port, and the column itself are all tri-clamped in place. So if I get tri-clamp ferrules of the same size, then I can reuse the heating element, reuse the valve on the drain port, reuse the SCR that controls the power, reuse the column. I can fit my big plated column onto my smaller still. So this modular build gives me a great deal of flexibility and saves me a huge amount of money. So let's get into the build. Okay guys, so this is a 50 litre keg and this is a slimline 30 litre keg. Just to give you a sort of general size comparison on what we're looking at, you'll see it's a lot slimmer in diameter and it's a little bit taller, which is all going to help me with getting that reducing volume in here to keep the elements covered during a run. Okay, so these kegs are relatively modern, relatively recent. You may find that the kegs that you can get hold of are a lot older, and also there are many different types of keg heads attached. These are a type A keg head. They're common all over the world, but then there are, I don't know, 6 or 7 other types of keg head fittings. This video is going to focus on converting one of these. If you have a keg and the head looks significantly different, you may need a different video guide to how to safely remove the spear, because these kegs are, generally speaking, pressurized and powerful springs inside on the valves, and beneath that spring is a spear, which well, you don't want to get speared by a spear, if you know what I mean. So you have to be careful taking them apart. And as I said, in this video, we're going to focus on type A. I'm going to give you a close-up of the head, just so that you know for sure what's going on. So this is what a type A keg head looks like. It's got a lip around the outside, and the button is, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch or a few millimeters lower than the surface of the keg head. There's a hole here. This is so that if you have the, the money and the access to a proper keg head removal tool, they're very expensive. I mean, I run a brewery and I don't have one, that you can remove these kegs heads safely and without destroying any of the stuff. But I don't have such a tool, and so we're going to literally rip this thing apart to get it out, because we don't need it. Once we've taken it out, it's not going to be used again as a keg ever. It's just going to be used as a still, and we don't need this. So if your keg head does look different, you better find another video that shows you how to safely get it out. But this is what we're going to work with. All right. Okay guys, so as I said, these kegs, if they've been used to contain beer, which almost always have been, they could be pressurized, and the amount of pressure in here is quite significant, and you need to safely get the excess carbon dioxide out of there. Now, if you have a keg head such as this, or sorry, a keg connector such as this, you can use it to vent the gas off. I've just put a tap on here, which is the beer outlet, and I've removed the non-return valve from the gas inlet. So if I slide this over like this and turn the handle down, it will remove pressure. And because I've got a closed tap on the top, it ain't going to be squirting beer all over me, and I won't have a beer shower. Now, you may not have such a thing. And if you do, you might not have a tap on the end of it. If you haven't got a tap on the end of it, you can lay it on its side. If it's on its side, the spear will be empty and no beer will be coming squirting out the top. Okay, so that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is to take a screwdriver, wedge it in here. You can probably hear that just by doing this, some gas is escaping. So you can do it very slowly, like this, and you'll be fine. You may want to put a cloth over the top while you do it, so that you don't get that beer shower. The other thing you could do is get a bigger screwdriver than this and really wedge it in hard and lever downwards to depress this central button. But again, be sure you've got it covered, otherwise you'll have that beer shower. And the chances are it ain't going to be fresh beer, so you're going to get a very nasty, stinky beer shower if you let yourself get covered in the stuff that's in here. Okay, so having showed you a way to do it with just a screwdriver, I'm just going to vent the rest of the gas out now. So as you can see, it takes a little while for the pressure to equalize. This one didn't have a lot of pressure in it to start with. Sometimes they can have a lot more. So whenever you're doing this, make sure you don't just stop after a few seconds. Just keep it going until you can't hear anything anymore. And then maybe a little bit longer. So with the gas safely vented out, what we can see is we've got a steel head here, a steel button here, and in between is some rubber, which effectively makes the seal. Now, it may have a different coloured inner band. This one is pink, sometimes they're green, sometimes they're other colours. But what we're going to do now is we're just going to remove it. We're going to get our screwdriver in here until, let's try a different way. Still some gas in there, you know. What we're trying to do is get underneath that rubber. There we go. You can see it starting to split. That's it. So now we've got it split. And what we're trying to do is get this piece of rubber completely out. So it takes a little effort, a little time, but it's starting to come out now. And yeah, of course, we're going to destroy it, but it doesn't matter because we don't need it. All right, I'm going to get on and just remove the rest of this. Finally. So you can see there was a little bit that was tucked up underneath the spear. Okay. So we have successfully removed the rubber, and what you can see underneath there is a washer. It's made of stainless steel, and that washer is retaining a very large and powerful spring. So for this next part, it's advisable to wear some form of eye protection, and for sure you do not want to be working with your head in close proximity to this, because when that spring releases, it's going to release under power. This washer is going to go wherever it goes, and the spring's going to pop up. All right, so again, we're just going to destroy this washer to get it out. So we stick our screwdriver underneath and we start to lever it out. Now I don't know if you can see, if I just turn this around, you can see the spring perhaps just coiled up underneath it. But we want this out. So we're going to just work quite carefully to deform it, and we're going to keep our body parts out the way. I'm going to get a bigger screwdriver. Perhaps I need an even bigger screwdriver, or perhaps hey, and there we go. So that completely deformed. There's the spring. And now what we find is that we've got the central button here, but we still can't quite remove it. There's something inside that's stopping it from being lifted out. This is a safety feature that is there to well, stop people getting speared by a spear. But it's quite easy to overcome. And what you've got to do is you just got to take this central button, lift it a little bit, and twist it. And I can't remember whether it's clockwise or anti-clockwise. Let's see. It's clockwise. And then when you let go, it drops down. Now you can see that it's now, I don't know, a centimetre, just over 1/4 of an inch, I guess, below the level of the head. Right, so now, with this central spear depressed, we can now remove this cake head, which is basically screwed on. So if you've got yourself a big wrench like this, and start to twist. Okay. Once it comes loose, that's going to just unscrew. Like this. And you can remove this. And now you can just wiggle it about a little bit and you can remove the spear. So the reason it was impossible to do before without dropping that down is that, here we go, it was trapped. So under normal circumstances, the button is high, like this, and you can see there's a tab here, and if I just wiggle this out again, you can see it's got a retaining lip. So that's to prevent you from removing it without having first disengaged it. So just by simply doing that, we can unscrew this and get this out. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. And having removed that, what we're left with is a small lip with a smooth surface on the top, and it just happens that this is precisely the size of a 2-inch tri-clamp ferrule. So now we can simply clamp our column directly onto the top. Just need to modify a gasket, and I'll show you how to do that later, for the tri-clamp fitting, so that one side is flush and the other side has the lip that goes inside the groove in the tri-clamp. Probably what you want to do now is hose this out, because if yours was an old one and had old beer in it, it probably stinks to high heaven. And what you want to do is just clean that stuff out of there so that you can work with a less stinky piece of metal. So we've given this a quick rinse out. Doesn't smell perfect, but it does smell better. And what we're going to do next is to make some holes. We've got to put a drain port on the side here, quite low down. We've got to put a heating element port on this side here, quite low down. And we've got to get rid of some of the steel here on the skirt that goes around the top, because what we want to do next is put in the tri-clamp ferrules. So this one will be for the cleaning port. Unfortunately, it can't be the same size as the one on my 50-litre keg, because there just isn't as much width of steel here. So I've got a slightly smaller one, which I can fit inside the rim, and my hand can just about fit through to give it a clean around the top inside. But I can't get it all the way in. That's about where it stops on my arm. But that's just a necessary factor of the size of this. So we've got to grind this off, make some holes, and 2 down here. All right, so come back to you when we're drilling. Okay, so when you are drilling stainless steel or cutting it, you really want to be working with quite a slow drill speed, and you want to have some oil handy just to keep the area lubricated and to cool down the cutting edges on the tools. If you try to go too fast, you will get a lot of heat generated. That will work harden the surface of the steel and make it much, much harder to cut through. So slow and lots of oil, definitely the way to go. Okay, there we are. That's the pilot. Now we can start cutting the big hole. And already it's starting to get hot. Well, we're through most of the way around now. It's just at the sides of the hole where the curvature of the keg runs away that we've still got steel attaching this together. But if you look here, you can see I've got smoke rising from my drill, which isn't up to the sustained torque to operate this at slow revolutions with a lot of weight behind it. So I'm going to let this puppy cool down before I totally burn it out, and then we'll finish off in a bit. And so eventually we have a hole. That one was really easy. The bigger the hole, the harder these cutters work, and the less successful this puny little, albeit Bosch, drill is at dealing with the torque. Okay, so the next job we have to do is to cut away a section of this top skirt to allow us to still have the handles for moving the keg around, but to create a space in the front where we can attach our tri-clamp fitting. So I'm just going to take a Sharpie and we're going to make a line that runs up like this, quite close to the handle. And then we're going to do the same on the other side. See if we've got those angles about the same. They don't look too bad. One's a bit closer than the other, so I'm just going to adjust that slightly. That's better. Okay, so with not a huge amount of battery remaining in this, and with the two holes cut in this direction, the time now is to cut away the seam. Now, of course, you've got to be careful doing these two sides, not to eat into or cut hole through, particularly in the steel of the keg itself. You just want to remove the metal around it. So let's see what we can do. And there we are. This is fairly warm, but the skirt has been removed. And now all I need to do is just file, grind, or otherwise remove these sharp edges so that it's easier to handle. Okay, so with the skirt removed, we just need to pick our spot quite carefully and just eyeball that for being where I want it. We'll mark the inside and the outside, well, at least as much as we can. There we go. So now we have some markers to help us get this right. Okay, so last time I drilled a lot of holes and joined them up with the Dremel. This time, as long as I stay with the Dremel close to the inside line, then I shouldn't have a problem, and I can grind out to the outside line when all this is cut. So I'm just going to show you a little bit of it, but it's going to take a little while. Okay, so turn that off so you can hear me. So as you can see, I'm staying to the inside. I'm avoiding touching the outside. We're just going to carry on like that until we've got ourselves a hole. Okay, so here we are. We have a hole, and it took, I don't know, 15-20 minutes to do that. Not too bad at all. Now we just got to grind the nasty edges off this and make this a perfect circle that is just the perfect size to take that ferrule. So I'll get into that. Okay. Yep. That's it. Okay, this one's in. In fact, oh, pretty well in. Yep, that's good. So we're almost there on this final one. That's it. Yep, we're in. Okay, now, so having done the dirty, greasy, oily, mucky work, noisy with all the power tools, we've now got 3 ports that fit. I've hosed this thing off to get the worst of the grit and muck off it, and now we've got to clean it with some alcohol just to get the oil off, any remaining oil that's there, because we don't want our flux to fail to grab a hold just because these holes are oily. So we're just going to give them a clean off. With a cloth soaked in some alcohol. Okay guys, so here we are, cleaned up with alcohol, loosely pushed in. Well, I say loosely, they're pretty firm. They're all in the place where I want them to be and at the right angles for brazing. So we're ready to rock and roll. But first I'm going to talk a little bit about using the right equipment to do the job. Okay, so this is a MAP gas torch. This cylinder contains a mixture of acetylene and propane, and this head is, well, the one that goes with it. So this burns with a hotter flame than you get from a normal propane torch. So it's worth having, but I do believe you can use a normal propane torch if you can't get one of these. People will tell you that you cannot silver solder stainless steel. That's not true. If you have the right kind of brazing rods and the right kind of flux, you can do it. So this is a 55% silver flux coated brazing rod, and the flux is specifically designed to work with steel. So this is going to do a good job of brazing on here. So it requires a fairly high temperature, but if you've got the right flux, if you've got the right solder and you've got the right torch, you can definitely solder stainless steel. Okay, so I'm going to get into that and we'll see you in a sec. So we're going to start by trying to get the surrounding work area as hot as possible. And what we're looking for is for it to turn a dull red including the work itself. And we're starting to approach it. So there we go. We have a dull red. And then what we do is we melt a little bit of the flux into the joint. Get that back to dull red. There we go. And then we follow up with the brazing rod. And we're going to go around this side and just repeat. All of the ferrules are now soldered into place. I think we've got a nice fit. So it's going to be a case of cleaning up the joints, which I'm just going to do with flapper disc, emery paper, file. I've got a stainless steel wire wheel as well. I'm going to use whatever I can to clean them up, probably a mixture of everything. And then we can move on to the next stage, which is preparing it for first use. Now, when I made my last video, a couple of my viewers commented in that you need to passivate the steel after it's been exposed to that much heat, and they're right. You can use pickling pastes, you can use special passivating pastes that you can buy commercially. I don't bother with those. What I do is I paint it all in a concentration of peracetic acid. Now, more or less any acid will do to passivate steel. Just needs to be a high enough concentration. I have peracetic acid on hand here in the brewery, so that's what I use. But you do need to do it, otherwise at some future point your steel might start to rust because it's become oxidized on the surface. So it's worth doing something to passivate, and using a professional paste will do a good job, but so will using any form of reasonably concentrated acid. Just be a little bit careful when you do it. The inside, less important, because we're going to do a vinegar run before we start putting any alcohol through. And the vinegar run, you know, superheated vinegar steam, it's going to do the job. So here it is, cleaned up, everything welded in place, and we come to the moment of truth. Does this modular thing really work? Let's see. So let's put the gasket on here, heating element in the hole. Don't let me down. Okay. Drain port. Looks like everything fits. That's the new gasket for there. And the new cap. We have ourselves a 30-litre still. Fantastic. All right, thanks guys. I'm going to leave it here. If you want to find out about how you do the cleaning, watch my other video because it's all in there. This video is already way too long. I'm going to try and edit it down a little bit, but that's it for this one. We have ourselves a modular 30-litre boiler. for our still. We can transfer the column directly onto here. All good.